After freeze last year, bus and train fares are going up by 2.2% from December 26. Office holders Audrey Tan and Rahayu Mahzam will sit on Parliament's Committee of Privileges for Raisa Han's case. And here's your chance to name Singapore's adorable panda cub. All the details coming up. Good evening, you're watching The Big Story. I'm Haryanto Dimana. Subscribe to the Straits Times channel so you never miss a single episode. From December 26th, bus and train fares will go up by 2.2%. Now announcing this hike today following its annual fare revision exercise, the Public Transport Council said a key consideration for this year's fare review was the sharp plunge in public transport ridership last year. This year's fare hike is the result of the PTC carrying over the fare increase from 2020 after it decided to freeze public transport fares for that year. Now, what does the 2.2% translate to? It's a fare hike of 3 to 4 cents, depending on the distance for adults who pay their fares by card. Journeys of up to 14.2 kilometers will go up by 3 cents, while those further than 14.2 km will increase by 4 cents. And there will be a 1 cent increase in concessionary fares for seniors, students, persons with disabilities and low-wage workers. But prices for cash fares, single-trip tickets, monthly concessions and travel pass prices will remain unchanged. Journalist Kok Yufeng is here to discuss this further. Yufeng, the fare increase was expected this year as it was announced during last year's fare review exercise that the hike would be carried over to the next. But what do you make of this year's fare adjustments given that ridership remains low due to the pandemic?
Thanks, Jan. First of all, I would like to say that I think any fare increase will be painful for commuters, especially given this pandemic situation. What the Public Transport Council has said is that it's unable to continue to defer fare increases indefinitely, given the rising costs and the falling ridership due to the pandemic. So, in today's release, as well as during the press conference, PTC Chairman Richard Magnus had mentioned how they had spent a few days considering the various options, and although they wanted to try to freeze fare hikes this year, like we did it last year, they found it was impossible to do that. But this year's fare hike is not as great because, and it's actually largely due to last year's hike. So last year, the PTC had calculated that the maximum allowable fare adjustment will be 4.4% increase in public transport fares last year, but they had carried this over to this year. And taking into account this year's fare adjustment, which is negative 2.2%, the overall is 2.2%, which is like 2 to 4 cents increase for adult commuters. This year, what the PTC had done was to exclude what they call the network capacity factor in the calculation of the fare formula. So this, what they call the NCF, is used to calculate the cost of maintaining and expanding the transport network in relation to the demand for the same transport options. So what they did was they only took into account January 2020 of this year in the formula, which is the only month that was unaffected by COVID-19. And going forward, I think the council is expecting to apply the same principle to next year's fare review as well.
So that said, Yufeng, how will this fare increase affect commuters?
So as I mentioned just now, what this means is that for adult commuters who pay by card, this will mean a 3 to 4 cent increase in public transport fares. So what the council has done is they have separated it by the length of the journey. So for journeys that are 14.2 km long or shorter, for example, from Sengkang MRT to Raffles Place MRT is the example they gave, for adults, that would mean a 3 cent increase in fares. So that I think that would be $1.67 for that kind of trip. For longer trips, for example, from Boon Lay to Pasir Ris, the fare increase is 4 cents for adults, and this would be $2.17 going forward from December 26 onwards. For all other concessionary fares, for example, for seniors, for students, for low-wage workers, as well as for persons with disabilities, there is a cap on the fare hike to 1 cent. So this applies to all journeys, no matter the length.
And if looking ahead, is the Public Transport Council expecting ridership to go up? I mean, after all, vaccinated people can start returning to the workplace from January 1st, 2022.
So the Public Transport Council is quite aware of this, and I think they are monitoring the situation, as they said in the press conference. What I'll note is that next year's fare review exercise actually takes into account this year's ridership. And from what we know, ridership this year has also been quite low. So it's been about 50% or 60% compared to pre-COVID-19 levels. So I think the expectation is that ridership will continue to remain that way for this year. And that's what will be taken into account in next year's fare revision exercise as well. What the council is saying is that, they are still monitoring the situation. They are aware that, with more people working from home and, the shift towards telecommuting, there might be changes in travel patterns from commuters. But at the same time, they also said that they cannot exclude that commuters will travel via public transport for other means, for example, social means or for social purposes or other purposes. So it's still a question that is left to be seen. Also, I think what's important to point out is that next year there will also be a revision of the fare formula, because the current fare formula expires in 2022. So we'll wait and see what the council does in terms of that as well.
Well, thank you so much, Yufeng, for the sharing. That was journalist Kok Yufeng. In other local headlines, Minister for Culture, Community and Youth Edwin Tong and Parliamentary Secretary for Communications and Information and Health Rahayu Mahzam will sit on the Parliamentary Committee hearing the complaint against Workers' Party MP Raisa Khan, who has admitted to lying in Parliament. Nominated by Speaker of Parliament Tan Chuan Jin, Mr. Tong and Ms. Rahayu will take the place of Minister for Home Affairs and Law K. Shanmugam and Minister in the Prime Minister's Office Indranee Rajah. They had recused themselves from the committee. This as Ms. Indranee, who is leader of the House, had made the complaint, and Mr. Shanmugam is in charge of the ministry overseeing the police. Ms. Raisa had admitted on Monday to lying in Parliament about details of a sexual assault case that she alleged was mishandled by the police. 183 people are being investigated after enforcement's checks on 70 entertainment and nightlife outlets. In one case, police found 39 men and 16 women in an unlicensed KTV concept outlet, where a lounge area was equipped with karaoke systems and TVs, and bottles of liquor were found on tables in the unit. They will be investigated for flouting COVID-19 measures and other laws. Home appliance megastore Courts will be opening its second flagship store at the Heron this Saturday ahead of schedule. Taking over the space that was previously occupied by retail stalwart Robinsons, Courts Nojima will feature a fully equipped esports gaming room capable of hosting esports tournaments, among others. Courts also saying today that it will close its existing Orchard outlet at 228 Orchard Road, but its Tampines megastore will continue to operate. Singapore's giant panda cub needs a name, and you can help choose what it will be. Panda names are unique around the world, which means no two pandas have the same name. Mandai Wildlife Reserve has narrowed the choices to 5 and voting begins today. You have until 11:59 p.m. on November 7th to have your say at mandai.com/panda cub. So get voting! In global news, world leaders are leaving the COP26 climate conference feeling optimistic about what's been achieved. Two major deals, one to cut methane emissions and the other on deforestation. Before he left, US President Joe Biden spoke about the sense of urgency in tackling the climate crisis.
So I think there's a whole different attitude that's out there. And I think this is being led, and I'm not being solicitous here, I think this is being led by my granddaughters and their friends, that generation. I think they're out there going, whoa, and they're having a profound impact. Having a profound impact on their parents and their grandparents about what's happening. And then all these climactic and climactic things have happened that people are now paying attention like they never did before.
Joining me now from Glasgow is Science and Environment correspondent Audrey Tan. Hey Audrey. Audrey, deals agreed, commitments made by countries. Do these signify real progress in dealing with the climate crisis?
Hi, Jan. So yesterday there were two important pledges that were signed by more than 100 world leaders. The first one is a pledge to end deforestation and even reverse it by 2030. And the other one is another pledge to cut methane emissions by 30% in 2030 from 2020 levels. So these are both important steps for a couple of reasons. So in terms of methane, for instance, we all know about carbon dioxide as a greenhouse gas, but methane is actually a more potent gas, meaning that it can trap much more heat on the planet over shorter timescales than carbon dioxide. So if there's a pledge to actually cut the amount of this gas in the atmosphere, then that could actually help the world reduce the warming under the Paris Agreement. Secondly, deforestation. So we all know that the main cause of global warming today is the burning of fossil fuels, but deforestation and land use changes are also a huge contributor to the release of greenhouse gas emissions. So actually pledging to stop deforestation could actually turn off the tap of emissions. And actually by reforesting the forest, we ensure that our forests can do what they do best, which is photosynthesize and take in planet warming carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. However, while these are two steps in the right direction, I think we still need to see how the rest of the talks pan out during this 2-week conference, because there's still a lot of other issues to be worked out in terms of reducing carbon dioxide, the main greenhouse gas, and other issues in terms of climate finance to help developing countries cope with the climate impacts.
Right. Audrey, separately, over the years, you've attended many conferences. How does COP26 held under the cloud of COVID-19 compare? Because I can see in your background that life seems to have returned to normal.
Yes, so in Scotland now you have to wear a mask when you're in an indoor place. And yes, as you said, in terms of conference, like just before I left for Glasgow, I covered the Singapore International Energy Week, which was also a conference held during COVID. But I think you can see that it's pretty much different in terms of scale. So for here in Glasgow, you see the turnstiles behind me, that's like the first level of security. We have to do daily antigen rapid tests and report that on the British government's website. And before we can gain entry, we actually had to show them an email that states clearly the date of the test, our names, and they actually compare that against our press passes. So that's the first step that we had to take. On top of that, within the compound, we all had to sign like a code of conduct that said that we will all wear a mask or face covering whenever we are inside the conference venue. There's also a lot of hand sanitizers everywhere, and we are all urged to keep a safe distance. Within the pavilions yesterday, for instance, I saw the German pavilion, they had unmasked speakers in a room and closed away from the audience who were masked. So that is just another kind of COVID measure. However, there is some kind of irony in that, because despite all these safe distancing measures, making us do antigen rapid tests and making us wear masks, there's in the secondary security clearance, people are actually packed together like sardines. The security guards are asking us to close the gaps, fill the gaps, which flies in the face of all other safe distancing measures. The long queues are huge bugbear among the delegates at this conference. Hopefully things improve, because it is going to be pretty challenging to wait in line for over an hour every day just to get into the conference venue.
Right. Well, Audrey, do stay safe there, and thank you so much for the updates. That was our Science and Environment correspondent, Audrey Tan. You can follow our coverage of COP26 on straitstimes.com. And before we go, for those of you heading down to Little India for the Deepavali festivities this evening, do take note that the pedestrian crossing at the Campbell Lane Serangoon Road Junction will be blocked off from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. Well, if you haven't seen this year's light up yet, it's spectacular. Despite the pandemic, organizers have not scaled back on the thousands of fairy lights and stunning decorations. Earlier, Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong sent his greetings, wishing all Indians who celebrate the festival a happy Deepavali. And from all of us here at the Straits Times, may the coming year bring you joy and light. I'm Haryanto Diman. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on Friday.